It is currently August 3rd. It is the beginning of a whole new month. And last month, my weekly goals was pretty much a disaster. And it was a disaster, I would say, because of the psychological blocks I had around one book. When it came to choosing what I would read next, it was between Super Communicator and The Artist Way. A super communicator because I did want to learn how to be a better communicator, and The Artist Way because it had a lot of viable advice of how to be a creative. Two of those self-improvement areas was very important to me, so I knew it would either be this one or this one. And when it came to choosing one to do first, I went within myself and said, let me do the one that scares me the most, okay? Because when something scares me the most, I tend to have an aversion to it. And this is my era, my 6 months of, not having an aversion. Let's tackle the scary one, okay? And tackling the scary one, I wouldn't say it was a mistake. I won't say that, right? But I will say that it did have a huge part in derailing my habits, my goal tracking for the rest of July, okay? And I'm not mad about that. That experience is just data into how I need to tackle August. And I should go into what was so scary about the Super Communicator book. Basically, I am an introvert, okay? However, I do want to improve when it comes to my communication skills. And to do that, how I would apply what I'm learning in the book is to extend my bandwidth or go beyond my bandwidth for extroversion. I know how to be an extrovert. If I were to put a number on my stamina, it would be like 20 to 30 minutes of extroversion is what I could do. Okay? What I say half the day before my battery runs out. But to put this into practice, right? To put what they're telling me into practice, I will have to really go past my bandwidth, to make sure that I'm actually improving as a communicator. And that made me quite anxious, and I just didn't want to do it. So I would find myself again having an aversion to the book. The problem with that is, while I have this aversion to the book, my mental discipline has improved in a way where if I'm not doing what I need, what I had in mind to do, if I'm avoiding something, right? Let me say it this way. Before, by avoiding something, I would find something else to distract myself, okay? So let's say by avoiding to read this book, an old me, right, would read like a fiction book that I've been interested in instead of what I'm supposed to be reading. But I have improved in such a way where we're not going to distract myself with anything else. If this needs to be done, it needs to get done. And if it's not getting done, then I guess I'm going to sit here and do nothing. Would I then delve to that one thing? No, I would go into ADHD paralysis. I would do nothing. Okay? And what would happen is hopefully the pain of that will eventually have me tackle that one thing, but that wouldn't happen. And even if it did, right? Even if I did eventually, like within an hour or so, came about to finish the 2 chapters of reading this book, the time that I had, I found myself without enough time to continue the rest of the goals of the daily habits I need to finish. I only have, pockets of time to do each one. So for workout, I only have the pocket of time I have at home or at a hotel for my job to actually do it. But I'm not doing it. Why? Because I have not finished that book, and I don't want to do anything else until I finish the 2 chapters of that book. You see how it works? So by the time I can get over the mental blockage and tackle what I'm afraid of, the window to do the other goals has already passed. That is pretty much what happened in July, okay, over and over. And in August, that just can't happen. I'm just going to have to read the book, okay, and suffer whatever mental pains that come with trying to apply that into my daily life. And see myself become a better communicator. So let's detail what is a winter arc. The winter arc is a social media trend, particularly popular on TikTok, that encourages people to use the last 3 months of the year, October to December, to focus on personal development and goal setting, aiming to achieve positive changes before the new year. It's a way to get a head start on New Year's resolutions by leveraging the colder, darker months for introspection and focused effort. We only have 2 months left until the winter arc is here. And one thing that I had real planned in content for the winter arc was the HSK1 exam for Mandarin and the Delhi A2 or A1 proficiency exam. These are proficiency exams for language learning. That is what I wanted to do for the winter arc, right? And get, flying colors. But because I spent this month not being able to be as prolific with studying because of this book, because of a mental blockage I had around this book, I have decided that I'm going to have to push that back into the beginning of 2006, taking those proficiency tests, okay? Just so I have more ample time to study extensively and be prepared for that test, those tests that I have to pay for, And I really hate to do that, okay? I really do hate to push back something, because when I have something set, I want it set in place, So what I'm learning from that, pushing it back, just means that I can't let that happen again, right? What happened in July can't happen in August, because I already had to push back something I had intended for a very important part of self-development, which is that winter arc. Another reason why I was struggling to complete the 4 hours of language learning, so it's 2 hours of Spanish, 2 hours of Chinese. That is what me and ChatGPT have calculated to be how much I have to study daily to be prepared for those proficiency tests. What I would do before is 2 hours, sit down somewhere, take 2 hours of Duolingo. So, for example, my commute to work includes 55 minutes on the train station, a 55-minute ride to where I need to be, to my workplace. And during those 55 minutes, I would, take out my tablet and just do Duolingo for the rest of that 55 minutes, right? And then if I find another hour to kill in the rest of the day, then I would use the rest of that time to get those 2 hours, okay? 2 hours of Spanish, 2 hours of Chinese, right? So let's say, I'm done for the day. I got to commute back 55 minutes. That will be 55 minutes of Chinese on the way back. And then 1 hour at home once I wind it down. And then that's how I'll get my 4 hours of Spanish, 4 hours of Mandarin, okay? But I've recently, doing a sit down, the sit down and hour of focus that requires have been tricky. And as it says, Duolingo isn't necessarily enough to really make progress in your language learning. What I have attempted was basically, 15, so let's say 55 minutes on the train, 15 minutes of vocabulary practice, 20 minutes of speaking, 20 minutes of reading on the train, right? Okay, again, I have an ebook of beginning Spanish stories, so I've been reading that on the train. So already, I find myself tackling, core areas, 3 different core areas: reading, speaking, and acquiring more vocabulary on one train ride. Okay, and after I got on the train, I have to take another train to the workplace. And what I would do on the walk there to the other train is I would do the 20 minutes of listening. I want to detail a scenario where the second train was not working, right? There was a crisis around the next train. And usually, right, I had to get to work on time at a certain particular time, and this train is not working. I'm going to be late. Instead of panicking, right? Instead of panicking and going into my head about things not going right for the day, I immediately focused on finishing the 20 minutes of Spanish listening, right? So I liked that experience of something not going right, but me focusing on what I can control, which is this thing I have to do for the day, which is this habit I had to finish for the day, which is the 20 minutes of Spanish listening. And while the administrators, okay, whoever was running this train was figuring everything out, eventually, they figured it out. I got to go on the train. I just brimmed on the satisfaction of, instead of spending 20 minutes frustrated, panicking, wondering what to do next, I was doing something to go right while this crisis was being sorted out. And I really, really enjoyed that. By the time I got to work, I was able to get 40 minutes of language learning done. Okay, and it felt like, and that process felt like more like a breeze than strenuously sitting down for an hour doing Duolingo. I really like that. I did not feel those 40 minutes of learning like I did feel it during Duolingo, but I did feel a particular skill area being more developed. So this August, again, this is August 3rd, so for the rest of the August days, I am going to try and tackle this more aggressively and see if it brings more of an improvement on my learning. But despite that, as I said, I was able to tackle more easier Spanish reading, speaking, reading, speaking, and listening. There's other areas that I have to do, which is writing, and on the paper I'm supposed to do 20 or 30 minutes of a mock test, right? So just test myself every day on Spanish just to see if I'm improving on these tests, right? And that will be good practice for when I have to take the big tests. Okay, testing myself now on where I am is just going to be good practice for that bigger event. And I have not been doing that. And I know that's because I am not the best in Spanish grammar. That's another psychological block is what I'm saying, right? I already know that I have not been wrapping my head around how Spanish grammar works. So I know if I sit down there and do some writing, I am going to embarrassingly not have a handle in how to write Spanish out grammatically. And I don't want to face that. But this month is where I'm going to have to face that. That is the weak areas that I will make sure that I'm focusing on for this month. Another reason why this month is very important, getting over the psychological blocks, right, with the book and with the language learning, is the artist in the next book called The Artist Way. For what I've learned from people who have read the book is that within it there is this 75-day challenge. I'm not really sure the details of that challenge, but what I do know is that the 75-day challenge will involve probably 75 days of, again, aggressively being creative in whatever you're creative at. If I were to guess what that's about, it would be that. And I would want to do that. I would want to do that 75 challenge for my winter arc in replacement of looking forward to taking the exams during the winter arc, studying for those exams. You know what I mean? So I've already replaced the exams with something else that I could look forward to in the winter arc, but that something else cannot happen until I read this book that I'm so scared of reading. Read and apply that book. Okay? And that's pretty much where I am when it comes to weekly goals. Okay, I'll see you soon when I have something else to say. And hopefully have improved significantly in hitting my weekly goals.